Thank you all for attending First Thursdays today on Okies for Monarchs with Sustainable Tulsa. We're really glad to have you all today here with us, and we're glad you've made the time to be with us. We do hope that you're, staying safe and healthy, and I know soon we'll be seeing each other more and more, hopefully in person. So we hope everyone is doing well. Megan's going to launch a poll real quick, and if you don't mind, take a moment to answer those questions while we begin. It helps us as we move through making sure we're getting information out to you and how to best do that. So, okay, and thank you to our sponsors today as well. Our lead sponsor is Williams, and our neighborhood sponsor, our partner is Public Service Company of Oklahoma and PSO Wind Choice, and our community advocates are American Waste Control, Cavanta, the Met, One Oak, Save Our Streams, Spirit Air Systems, and Tulsa Farmers Market. Give them a virtual round of applause. Literally, their sponsorship is how we're able to provide this free program that we've been doing for over a decade now. So thank you to our sponsors. And if you know anybody at those organizations, just give them a thank you as well. We do appreciate their support. I also want to thank my board members that are with us today. Again, it's an incredible board that's been so supportive since our beginnings, but really this last year through the pandemic, I can't be more thankful for their support. Today we have with us Wayne Isaacs, Carolyn Janney, Richard Katarski, Nadia Kirlova, Aaron Larder, Mike Lemus, Carrie Rowland, Mike T, and Stephanie Vickers-Regan. Really appreciate them, and also want to thank my team, Sustainable Tulsa team, incredible team. We have Megan Hurley, who helps to make sure that you get to enjoy these First Thursday programs. So Megan Hurley, Teresa Kerrigan with our scorecard program, Jill Mott, our office specialist, and Erica Gavula, who is now helping us launch an individual scorecard program. So give them also a virtual round of applause. Appreciate all of their work and commitment to our mission. Before we get started, I just wanted to say, becoming a supporter of Sustainable Tulsa is easier than ever. Just for $25, your name could be added to our growing list of change makers in our community on the Oklahoma Green Living page. We'd love to have your support to that, and that helps keep all of our programs going. We're also excited to announce a webinar next week. It'll be free and open to the public. It'll be May 13th, Thursday, with Brad Carl with Nature Conservancy, and it's how to talk to your team about climate. He did a little pre-review of that at our last First Thursday and at our last B2B as well. But this is a deeper dive. And again, it's free. And Teresa's dropping that registration link in the chat now. So space is limited. So register soon. I think we're about half at capacity right now. So go ahead and register if that's something you want to be a part of. It will not disappoint. Okay. And our next First Thursday is on environmental justice. That will be held on Thursday, June 3rd, with our speaker, Emily Pinkney, from Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium in Tacoma, Washington. So we're in for a treat with her presentation on environmental justice. So please join us. And that registration is opening today. And Teresa also will put that link in the chat for you now. So I think it's also important, why we timed that particular program on environmental justice for our June 1st Thursday is because May 31st and June 1st marks the unfortunate 100 years from the Tulsa Race Massacre here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so leading up to our June 1st Thursday, we'll be sharing various educational resources and events surrounding the centennial via our social media channels. So I know there's lots of resources out there, and we encourage you to visit tulsa2021.org to find events and happenings in our community. So many ways to be engaged and be a part of remembering and about the healing and next steps in our community. So please be a part of that and join us for our next First Thursday. Sustainable Tulsa has also launched a Facebook group in January and this year. And so to help you connect with the community around sustainability, and if you'd like to connect with sustainably minded people, join our Facebook group. Teresa will put that link also in the chat for you. And it's a great way to have those connections with others and learn from each other. So many incredible knowledge base in our community around sustainability. So lots of great resources there in that Facebook group. And now I'm going to hand the mic over to Megan. She's going to introduce our digital booths.
Thank you, Corey. All right, first up, I have Carrie Rowland with PSO. She's going to give a couple of quick updates. Carrie, are you with us?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Megan. Real quick, wanted to let you know, starting in May, we're offering residential tune-ups. So this is a great time to get your spring cleaning done. We haven't done an HVAC tune-up for residential customers in about 5 years. So this is due for us to help out folks get their systems up and running. So take advantage of that. And then we also would like to mention something about wind choice. So make sure if you're a PSO customer right now, you're already using 20% wind, but if you'd really like to bump that percentage up, I know in my household we're 50% wind and it costs me less than an extra $4 a month on my bill. So something to consider to do. And now more than ever, it's important because if you are interested in joining, we have a new lower price. So that price per kWh that you would pay for your wind has gone down. So it's a great opportunity to not only make a difference in the environment, but also help Oklahoma because it's Oklahoma wind. So we can all be proud of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you guys have 8 wind farms and a 9th now with Sundance. Is that correct?
So yes, we just recently opened a new wind farm. It came online a couple weeks ago called Sundance, and we're looking forward to more of these wind farms that are under construction right now to come online, hopefully by early 2022. So
that's fantastic.
it's great. It's great news for Oklahoma for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Carrie. All right, up next we have Jessica or Amanda. I'm not sure who's joining us today with American Waste Control.
Hi, this is Jessica. I'm a project manager with American Waste Control, and we offer lots of services. We have our own waste to energy landfill. We do recycling for both our residential and business locations, and we also have the opportunity for wood recycling, which is a great new addition we had in the last couple of years. So if you have any questions about that, Amanda's contact information is there at the bottom. She'd love to chat with you about that. We can go to the next slide.
I think that's all I had for you.
Okay, well, I was going to talk about the Iron Man as well for a second, and I'll put the information for that in the chat real quick.
Okay.
We are partnering with Iron Man International, and in about 2 weeks, they're going to be setting up for the North American Championships here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is our first time to do for Tulsa to host an Ironman. So it's a pretty big event. Plus we are debuting with the national championships for North America, which means that the top qualifiers will go on to the world championships. So we are partnering with them to head up their environmental crew to keep everything clean. We're going to have people out there helping make sure everything that can be recyclable is separated. We even have composting through full sun composting. So we hope that you will come out there with us, and I'll put a link in the chat if you are interested in signing up.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate you filling that in for us. So yeah, Ironman is coming, guys. It's so exciting. I was supposed to be here last year, but now we get to get back in person. So up next is Allie with the Met.
Yes, real quick, just wanted to say that all of our recycling centers are open, and we currently are accepting our usual recyclables and getting those recycled. So if you don't want to do the curbside at this point, you can definitely bring them to us. And then we also have 2 really awesome events coming up. One is tonight. We have the Go Green Night at the Tulsa Drillers. So come see us. We'll have a booth set up at 6 o'clock, and they're giving away bobbleheads tonight. So that's always a fun reason to go. And then next Wednesday at Guthrie Green, we have our Enviro Expo from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. So come down and see us.
There you go. Thank you so much, Allie. And just a quick plug. I know we still have some issues with recycling contamination, which is why we had that fire in April at our recycling center. So Quick plug for our February or March Recycling 101. That link is on our First Thursday page on our website. So you can always go there to see what you can and can't recycle. Please go to the Met in the meantime while the recycling center is being repaired. So, and then we have City of Tulsa's Save Our Streams. Their plug is, of course, for the household pollutant facility. It's a fantastic facility that we have. If you've got paint, you know, anything that's a hazardous chemical, you can take it to this facility. I live in Tulsa County. I don't live in the city of Tulsa. And you can take your utility bill, and I believe you can get waivers from the Met in order to take your items there. So fantastic resource that we have in our city. So last but not least, we have the Divis has a brand new Monarch way station that they're working on. Do we have, is it Janae from?
Yes.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so this is a new fundraiser opportunity that we're doing instead of our traditional gala event. And it's our goal to create a garden space where families can begin to take meaning of the trauma that they've experienced due to domestic and sexual violence. So our goal with this is to, create a certified Monarch way station. And we're consulting with Grog's Green Barn on the design and working with Tall Grass Landscaping to take this rendering from imagined to real. And we're proud that we're looking to only use native Oklahoman plants and really working to ensure the place is sustainable and something that will not just be a joy to look at, but an educational opportunity for the kids that come through our space. So with the help of the community, we're not only being able to create this space, but also have be able to do the life-saving work that we're doing at Divis. So if anyone's interested in more information, our website directly for Monarch Evolved is there.
Awesome. And that's dvis.org/evolved. Thank you so much. So I've enjoyed the Monarch Ball in the past, but I love this new iteration of your fundraiser. It's going to be a beautiful place. So thank you so much. And Corey, it's back to you.
Okay, now on to our program today. It's definitely my honor to introduce Rick Katarski from our team here. And well, when I say team, he's on so many of our committees. I love working with Rick. Rick Katarski is the curator of conservation and scientific advancement at the Tulsa Zoo, where he has worked for 21 years. He manages 14 wildlife conservation programs worldwide and efforts to save endangered and threatened species. He's currently chairs the Monarch Initiative of Tulsa, which he'll share a little bit about today, and is the steering committee member of Okies for Monarchs State Collaborative. He's also serves on the board of directors with Sustainable Tulsa. We're thrilled that he's with us, and also he's a scorecard coach. Rick has also served on the board of directors for Oxley Nature Center and loves talking all things monarchs. So of course, that's why he's with us today to moderate. So Rick, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Corey. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks to everybody who's tuning in. Normally, I have the honor of doing this presentation the past few years and have done it collaboratively with some other folks, and so it's an honor to talk these two wonderful ladies into doing this presentation today. And so if you don't know, Okies for Monarchs started as a summit in 2016 down in Oklahoma City, and it was just a way to get like-minded organizations and individuals who are concerned about the pollinators in our state and also monarchs. And so what came from that was the statewide group. And so the Oklahoma Monarch Pollinator Collaborative was born, and the kind of outreach and marketing arm of that and education arm is Okies for Monarchs. And so you can find out more information about the organization by going to okiesformonarchs.org. Also, as Corey mentioned, we have something similar to that, a collaborative here in the city of Tulsa called Monarch Initiative Tulsa, that our information, the collaborative lives on Sustainable Tulsa's website. So you can go to sustainabletulsainc.org, click on the Monarch tab, and find tons of resources on how to put in a garden yourself. And also other links like the Kerr Center and Monarch Watch. So you can go to monarchwatch.org and click on that and get information about how to certify your garden once you actually put the habitat in. So tons and tons of resources out there. But today is all about Okies for Monarchs and some great information about what's going on with the monarchs. So Katie Boyer is going to be our first presenter, and she's going to talk about basically monarch biology and give us kind of the broad scope of their status and what's going on with that listing of them being endangered. And then second will be Vonceil, who's going to basically tell us how we can all get involved with monarch conservation. So let me present Katie. First is Katie Boyer. So Katie Boyer is a recovery biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, where she has worked for over 10 years on at-risk, threatened, and endangered species listings and recovery. Katie has been engaged in pollinator conservation since 2015, when she began serving as the Southwest Region's Monarch Outreach Specialist. In this role, Katie works with a variety of partners to implement monarch conservation activities and to lead outreach efforts that will increase awareness of monarch and pollinator decline. She also serves as the co-lead of the Service's National Pollinator Partnership Team, which is working to harness the service's existing partnership and create novel partnerships that will synergize pollinator conservation efforts.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you all today. I've been working on monarch conservation since 2015, and I'm sure some of you, including Marcy there, have been working on monarchs for way longer than I even have. My agency has recently expanded the scope of our work on monarchs to include all pollinators because of the success that we've seen working on monarch conservation. And through this new national pollinator effort, we are working towards a vision of a diverse community working together to conserve landscapes where pollinators thrive for the benefit of nature and people. And I hope that you all will join us in making that vision a reality in the future for monarchs and for other pollinators. So why are pollinators important? Well, pollinators such as most bees and some birds, bats, butterflies, and other insects, of course, play a crucial role in flowering plant reproduction and in the production of many of our fruits and vegetables. These hardworking animals help pollinate about 75% of the world's flowering plants and produce about 1 of every 3 bites of food that we consume. This includes more than 180,000 different plant species and over 1,200 crops. Some examples of the crops that are pollinated include apples, squash, and almonds, even chocolate and coffee, and agave. So if you indulged in a margarita yesterday on Cinco de Mayo, thank a pollinator. That agave is pollinated by bat species. So that's awesome. A recent report by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services estimates that the annual global value of crops pollinated is up to $235 billion. So huge economic value of pollination. And of course, they also provide ecosystem services, helping to improve biodiversity, reducing erosion, and as pollinated plants die and decay, this organic matter provides nutrients for the next generation of life and improves soil health. So a myriad of benefits from our pollinator species. And monarchs are one example of a pollinator, and that's the one I'll be focusing on today. Without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about monarch biology. So monarchs go through a complete metamorphosis, which includes 4 stages: the egg, larva or caterpillar stage, chrysalis or pupa stage, and adult butterfly. Adults lay eggs on milkweed plants like you see here, often underneath the leaves or along the stems. These eggs take a few days to hatch, and then the first thing the larvae does is start eating that milkweed plant. Monarch caterpillars eat a ton and grow rapidly during that larval stage of about 2 weeks. They actually grow 2,000 times their original mass during that time frame, which is the equivalent of a human infant growing to the size of an adult elephant in 2 weeks' time. Once they are ready, they will find a safe place to create their chrysalis. And that is like the green structure that you see right here. And when they're ready to do that, the first thing that they'll do is hang upside down in a J shape, which might happen for 12 to 24 hours actually. And then very quickly, they will shed their skin one last time to create this beautiful green and gold pupa or chrysalis here. From there, it'll remain in that stage for about 2 weeks. And the very last thing that happens during that 2-week period is the monarch inside begins to develop that signature orange and black pigmentation that the adult butterflies have. So that's how you know a monarch is about to emerge or eclose as an adult butterfly. That process happens rapidly, and as you can see in the series of photos here, when the monarch first ecloses, it looks a little crumpled up there. It will actually pump fluids from its abdomen to its wings to spread them out and let them dry before it takes flight as the adult butterfly. Generally speaking, there are 2 populations of migratory monarchs in the US, and they're separated by the Rocky Mountains. The monarchs that you have in Oklahoma are part of the eastern migratory population that spend their winters down in the high elevation Oyamel fir forests of Mexico. The photos that you see on the right are showing their overwintering grounds where monarchs cluster together and create shingle-like structures on these specialized trees there. They spend from about the late of November to March down at their overwintering grounds before they head north and return to the United States, first entering through Texas and up into Oklahoma and laying their eggs. There are about 4 generations of monarchs that occur over the course of the year. So those eggs that are laid go through complete metamorphosis, emerge as adults, and they continue to fly northward over the course of the summer. Monarchs are seen in Oklahoma typically during the spring and the fall when monarchs are heading into the US and departing on their journey southward to Mexico. Monarchs are in the US across the board in spring, summer, and fall months, and you can find them in habitat of all different shapes and sizes. They are opportunistic and generally seek out habitats that have the necessary nectar plants to feed the adult butterflies, but also those milkweed plants, which are the host plant and the only plant that those caterpillars will eat. So any area that has these 2 primary components can be monarch habitat. And as an agency that primarily works on threatened and endangered species, this presents a really unique opportunity for us to work with everybody on monarch conservation. You can put potted plants on a patio, you can plant in your backyard, or you can plant thousands of acres of ranch land with monarch habitat pretty easily. And this is such a great opportunity. The moral of the story really is, if you build it, they will come. Monarchs occur all over the world, but 90% of the global population is a part of the North American population. That eastern monarch population that I mentioned before, its size is estimated by looking at the area they occupy at the overwintering grounds down in Mexico when they're gathered in really high densities. This population has been systematically censused annually since 1994, and the results are shown here. So you can see the decline over time. In the winter of 96 to 97, they were occupying about 45 acres of habitat, and they dropped to their all-time low in that winter of 2013 to 2014, when they only occupied about 1.6 acres of habitat. This past year, they occupied about 5 acres in Mexico, and this represents a 26% decrease from last year. In the Western United States, monarchs migrate to the coast of California each winter. For this population, the size is estimated by counting monarchs along the West Coast over a 3-week period called the Western Monarch Thanksgiving Count. This past year's estimate for that population was only 1,914 butterflies. This is a huge drop from where they were in 1997. Like you can see on the graph here, they had 1.2 million monarchs at that point in time. We are very concerned about this severe decline over the last 20 years. And we know that the survey effort, which is the blue line shown here, has increased over time. So more area is being looked at, but fewer monarchs are being detected. So why are monarchs declining? Well, the primary drivers affecting the health of these two North American migratory populations are changes in breeding, migratory, and overwintering habitat, continued exposure to pesticides, and the effects of climate change. Habitat loss throughout the breeding grounds has occurred from land use change, urban and suburban expansion, and the widespread use of pesticides. Prime historical habitats for monarchs, which is our native grassland, have declined, and as that has occurred, the monarchs have declined as well. Grasslands are considered the least conserved and most altered landscapes on Earth, according to a report by the Nature Conservancy. It's estimated that over 1.3 billion stems of milkweed have been lost, which is going to impact the monarch's ability to reproduce. In Mexico, habitat loss is occurring at the overwintering grounds due to factors like illegal logging that occurs there. And in California, the overwintering grounds are impacted by unsuitable management activities. In addition, climate change and weather extremes are affecting their migration and survival as well. And then lastly, insecticides also negatively impact our pollinator species, including monarchs. So because of their decline, we received a petition on August 26, 2014, requesting that we list the monarch as a threatened species. That year in December, we made an initial 90-day finding that the petition is substantial, which meant that it had enough information for it to warrant further review. We came to a settlement agreement with the original petitioners to provide a status assessment for that species by June of 2019. However, we realized at that time the population was fluctuating a lot and we wanted to see what was going on. So we were able to get an extension on that and changed the deadline to December 15th of 2020, just this past winter. So on December 15th of 2020, we announced a 12-month finding on that petition to list the monarch. Based on a review of the species status that looked at the biology and all of the stressors impacting it, we determined that listing is warranted, but a proposal to list the monarch is precluded while we work on higher priority listing actions. Ultimately, this means we added the monarch to the national listing work plan. It became a candidate species, and we will review its status annually to determine whether or not we need to list it as a threatened or endangered species. Currently, based on the listing priorities and workload, the service intends to propose listing the monarch in fiscal year 2024 if listing remains warranted at that time. Because it is a candidate, we will check annually to make sure that this priority is appropriate. And there are currently listing actions for 161 species on that work plan that are identified as a higher priority than the monarch. And part of the reason for that is the conservation efforts that are occurring not only in the United States, but also in Mexico and Canada to help out this species. Ultimately, our hope is that we don't have to list the species under the Endangered Species Act, but the only way we can do that is if we get enough conservation impacting the trajectory of the species. So we really need your help, and now is the time to engage in monarch conservation. So what we have been focused on because of their decline is just 4 elements here. We're looking at enhancing and improving habitat. Of course, they need somewhere to lay their eggs and for their caterpillars to feed, and the adults really need habitat to fuel that migration as well. So that's going to be native nectar sources. We also are propagating seeds to recognize that in some areas it can be very hard to find native seeds to restore habitat. So we are working with partners to change that. We also are working on research and monitoring efforts. And then, of course, community engagement and partnerships is critical to our effort ahead. So I showed you this graph before, but I just want to mention that the goal is for the eastern population of monarchs to reach a 10-year average population size of 6 hectares or 15 acres occupied at the overwintering grounds. That's what this line is showing here. And ultimately, it's estimated that we need 1.3 to 1.8 billion additional milkweed stems across the breeding range to achieve that goal. It's not just milkweed in our part of the country. We need milkweed and we need our native nectar sources in Oklahoma to help this population. This is truly an all hands on deck effort. A study was conducted to look at where we should put that habitat and where we can generate that milkweed. And ultimately it was determined that we need all different land use types to be engaged in this effort. So that includes marginal ag lands, urban areas, protected grasslands, conservation reserve program lands, and rights of way. So any kind of land, we need your help. And what do we need you to do? Well, we need you to create habitat, whether it's in your backyard, on corporate grounds, or on ranch land that you might manage or be involved in its management. You can incorporate best management practices by looking at the Okies for Monarchs website. There's a ton of great information there on best management practices for rights of way and also for rangelands. And engage in citizen science. It's a great way to engage community members in conservation as a kind of a gateway to caring about the environment. What's in it for you? Well, there's a ton of different reasons that you might want to get engaged. These are just a few of them, and I'm running low on time, so I'm going to kind of breeze over that and just point you in the direction of more information. So the Okies for Monarchs website has a ton of great information that Rick mentioned before. My agency also has the Save the Monarch website, which has great information about the Endangered Species Act and how that relates to the status of the monarch and what we're doing to help the monarch. And then of course, the Monarch Joint Venture is another great resource for you as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Katie. That was so informative. And people, if you really want to deep dive into the Okies for Monarchs efforts and the statewide monarch conservation plan, you can go to the Okies for Monarchs webpage. And there is a 48-page document, a PDF that you can download the state conservation plan, as well as the conservation plans of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as well. So with that, we'll move on next. And Katie is going to basically be talking, or I'm sorry, Katie. Vonceil is going to be talking. She's going to be talking about what Katie mentioned at the end about how you can get involved and how you can help with monarch conservation. So Katie Harmon has worked as a research specialist on threatened and endangered species conservation initiatives during her career in the zoological and transportation industries. Most recently, she has been involved with the nationwide candidate conservation agreement with assurances for the monarch butterfly on energy and transportation infrastructure lands. This agreement spans the contiguous 48 states to encourage landowners and managers to adopt measures to create net conservation benefits for the monarch. Vonceil also serves on the Okies for Monarchs Steering Committee as a member of the Rights of Way as Habitat Working Group, developing best management practices for the state of Oklahoma. So without further ado, it's Vonceil.
Thank you, Rick. Yes, I'm Vancil Harmon. I am a natural resources biologist at the Oklahoma Biological Survey, and I'm involved mostly in monitoring threatened and endangered species in Oklahoma roadways. I'm also a member of the steering committee, as Rick said, but just as a disclaimer at the beginning, I'm not here as a representative of the University of Oklahoma or as a representative of Oklahoma Department of Transportation. However, I am here as an advocate for promoting and enhancing pollinator habitat in working landscapes. And I want to share with you how private industries and government agencies are becoming monarch champions so that we can help respond to that action call that Katie just sent out. Next slide, please. Obviously, so why monarchs? I think all of us who are here today know why monarchs. Katie gave you a clear picture of what the threats are and why we are concerned. So with so many species, we are seeing declines in the population, we're seeing loss of habitat, we were seeing natural enemies such as parasitoids and predators that are now affecting our populations and increasing numbers. And in 2015, the Energy Resources Center at the University of Illinois in Chicago, I'm going to call it the ERCUIC because I don't think I can get my tongue around that any longer. But they met with a group of biologists, foresters, engineers, environmentalists, lawyers, educators, and other stakeholders, and formed a forum to collaborate and share information on habitat conservation on working landscapes. And with that attention, primarily focused on transportation and energy sectors. This group coalesced as the Rights of Way as Habitat Working Group and began developing an ambitious nationwide candidate conservation agreement to address these mounting threats. All hands on deck is a phrase that we just heard from Katie. I'm sure anyone who's involved with any kind of monarch conservation groups have heard this phrase. It has come from the Thogmartin 2017 research paper. And that linked the loss of monarch populations with the loss of milkweed, especially in Midwestern states. So I won't go into more in depth into that, but I would encourage you to seek out that publication if you would like to learn more about what that research found. It's leading a lot of the conservation efforts that we are involved in today in 2021. A lot of that information is what has been spurring us on. So our Rights of Way as Habitat Working Group that started developing the agreement. Of course, there were over 40 organizations. Some of them you probably recognize because they do operate within the state of Oklahoma. Of course, AEP, Evergy Energy, I think the Save the Trees initiative is also, or Grow with Trees is also a Tulsa initiative that was started in Tulsa, and of course the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. Next slide, please. And so what is this magical conservation agreement that I'm talking about? The Candidate Conservation Agreement with Assurances, or CCAA, is a formal voluntary agreement between the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and landowners to conserve habitat that benefit at-risk species. So what a CCA provides is assurance to non-federal partners in the form of what is called an enhancement of survival permit. And that permit ensures that no additional conservation measures will be required if the covered species later becomes listed under the Endangered Species Act. In return, CCA participants agree to a menu of approved conservation measures. And what the CCA really provides to industry is a balanced way to do conservation while still providing flexibility to manage working lands. The Monarch CCAA actually is the first and largest nationwide agreement of its kind. And it was completed in record time. It was approved on April 3rd, 2020, finalized on April 7th, and partners began enrolling immediately by the end of April. And to date, we have 25 energy and transportation organizations and agencies that have been issued agreement certificates. Just kind of as a caveat, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation was the first enrollment application that was received once the agreement was approved. So next slide, please. We can talk about net conservation benefits found within right-of-ways as broad linear networks that intersect a variety of landscapes. And they connect favorable habitats such as grasslands, parks, forests, and we can be assured that in right-of-ways there will be a minimum of major disturbances or future development. These right-of-way networks crisscross the United States. And most interestingly, if you look at the maps on the slide, there on the left, of course, is the oil and gas pipeline, grid. In the middle, you see the electric transmission line grid. And there on the right, you see the United States highway system. The density in these sectors mirrors the monarch migration flyway. So utility rights of way, it's estimated they comprise about 12 million acres of land. And transportation rights of way, which include roads and railroads, represent even more potential for wildlife habitat. State DOT lands alone consist of over 17 million acres. And this vegetation that is managed in right-of-ways, the majority of it is usually managed to prevent the growth of trees and other large woody vegetation. And so this type of management results in land that has potential to be in a perpetual state of arrested succession. And that creates the kind of open habitat that monarchs require. Next slide, please. Now, traditionally, over the last few decades, a migrating monarch has been greeted more like with the grocery shelf you see here. It's highly managed, offers very little nectar resources, and is pretty deficit of milkweed for reproduction. Not only do these types of right-of-ways provide little benefit for monarchs and other pollinators, they require a heavy investment in mowing, herbicide applications. They offer minimal stormwater runoff protection, and this increases the likelihood of flooding and erosion in agricultural lands and along our national transportation grid. Next slide, please. We know that diverse habitat is key to thriving monarch and pollinator populations. Habitat conservation at landscape scale is needed, and right-of-ways can offer that scale if proper land management techniques such as seasonal mowing, spot herbicide applications, and land set-asides become part of routine vegetative management practices. I won't try to say that again. Collaborative cooperation on best management practices can make a monarch's eye view like that full grocery shelf. But it also makes our driving experience more enjoyable. That picture that you see there at the top of the bluebonnets, that was taken last week on State Highway 81 between Marlow and Duncan. And right now our right-of-ways are really just blooming and busting. So I really encourage all of you guys to get out and take a drive. Next slide, please. Now, part of the collaborative conservation effort required from the CCA participation includes annual vegetative monitoring on all of the partners' enrolled land system during the growing season. This monitoring data is reported to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and is shared with other conservation organizations and researchers to track monarch population trends and to alert organizations of the need for adaptive management in order to provide most benefit. The long-term goal set by the CCAA is to enroll up to 26 million acres of energy and transportation lands. We estimate that this would contribute 300 million stems of milkweed and 2.3 million acres of monarch foraging habitat over the next 25-year lifespan of the agreement. Sorry for my neighbor. So as Katie mentioned, we're thinking about that 1.3 billion milkweed stems that it is estimated to sustain a healthy monarch population. This is a huge dent in that 1.3 billion. So in 2020, due to COVID-19 restrictions, only 12 of the 21 enrolled partners at that time were able to monitor. But in spite of travel and field survey restrictions, we were able to submit data on almost 4 times the amount of projected adopted acres. You know, I am a biologist, not an accountant, not an MBA, but that seems like a pretty encouraged return on an investment. Next slide, please. Now, I know I've been talking about conservation on a national scale, but I want to recognize tremendous effort that the state of Oklahoma has contributed to monarch conservation and awareness. And that's been going on since 2015, 2016 in various iterations of working groups. I know some of you obviously have heard of Okies for Monarchs. Their right-of-way best management document received national attention recently from ERC, UIC, the Audubon, the Audubon National Monarchs in the Rough Initiative boasts 13 golf courses in Oklahoma that have added pollinator acres to their land holding systems. So there's a lot that Oklahoma is contributing to monarch science and also contributing to the monarch migration flyway. Oklahoma is unique. Oklahoma and Texas really are unique in that we have these migrations twice. We have the spring, we have the fall, and at both times we have seen breeding and reproduction within our land holdings. So there's a lot more research to be done, and I know at Karen Baum at Oklahoma State University has done some papers on this work too, of the importance of Oklahoma to the eastern population migration, monarch migration. Next slide, please. In closing, I think this photo taken last year on I-40 by Henrietta kind of sums it up. Our goal is a thriving transportation and energy corridors that are also providing resources for our migrating visitors. I would just like to thank the efforts of all our state and national partner organizations in responding to that all hands on deck call. But I would also like to thank Sustainable Tulsa for inviting me and Katie to talk with you today. And thank you, the members who were listening today, because I know you guys are providing leadership to promote responsible environmental stewardship. So that's all I have for today, and I'll turn it back over to Rick.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Vonceil. That was awesome. If you have any questions for either one of these lovely ladies, please send that to Teresa. I think maybe she's hopefully gotten some questions and we have time to actually answer those questions. So
we're waiting for those questions to come over to you. One question I would have in regards to the program that Vonceil was sharing is, what is the difference in cost for your partners to go from regular right-of-way maintenance to adding, I guess, pollinator friendly seeds and things like that? Is there, what's the cost difference?
Well, that is a very good question, because we just, I think in the last month, we have formed a task force because what we found is, there has not been a lot of pollinator work done within right-of-ways. It's been kind of piecemeal. We do have Illinois DOT, Florida DOT, Washington DOT. From my perspective in the transportation industry, there has been some studies done, but we really want to look at going across all of the energy and transportation sectors. So we just formed a task force, and actually the ERC group just sent out a call to try and get people to join that task force so that we can actually get some science on what the costs really are, what the benefits are. Of course, because anecdotally, of course, when we're looking at reduction in mowing, when we're looking at reduction in herbicide application, how much we're putting out there in the landscape, we really feel that we are realizing some big cost savings. I know for one of the major factors that we've also seen is that native seeds have been hard to come by. The nursery industry has really been responding to us over the last 5 years in trying to get more native seeds back into production so that we could do these large scale projects. But that's the thing with monarch habitat. We've got to have diversity, and so we definitely need that seed mix. So right now the cost of seeds is a little expensive. So we need to find where those offsets are, but that information is coming.
Great. Well, thank you. I look forward to hearing back from you. And yeah, there's a lot of, as you kind of pointed out, there's lots of different things to consider. There's the seed cost, but you're going to save money on less mowing and things like that. So it's just kind of figuring out all those different costs. So thank you so much. I'm so excited about that project that you've been working on. So Rick, passing it back over to you with the questions that you've been sent. Thank you so much, Vonceil.
Okay, we have a question for Katie, and this question is, how do we protect our monarch caterpillars from tachinid flies or OE bacteria?
That is a great question.
It's $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And ultimately, I mean, I think, you know, we as a fish and wildlife service, we don't do a lot of like rearing of monarchs. So if you're talking about rearing of monarchs, it's a little different, but essentially creating that native habitat outside, you know, there's natural risks at play here. OE, that Ophiocystic electroscura, is a parasite that affects monarch caterpillars, and it tends to be more prevalent in areas that have non-native tropical milkweed. So if you do have tropical milkweed out there, there are really good resources about properly caring for it and cutting it down in the fall to make sure you're reducing the risk of that OE spreading. So, but also if you can replace it with native plants, if those are available in your area, then that would be the preferred way to move forward there. But that's the number one thing I would say to help with that.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Vonceil, this one's for you. And I get this question all the time, so I'll be interested on your point of view of this.
You haven't answered it. I can't answer it.
Well, I'll answer it if you don't want to. But so why are monarchs more important to the environment than any other species of butterfly?
Well, you know, personally, I think it's because of their unique, you know, their unique life cycle. I think, you know, scientifically, of course, this is fascinating. It answers a lot of migration. It adds to our migration data, you know, not just with birds migrating, but how, you know, monarchs are using that flyway. But from the other end, the reason that I think monarchs have captured the imagination of cultures across its whole migration. You know, it's the whole corridor. In Mexico, there are huge festivals which are just fantastic that celebrate the monarch. The monarch is you know, it's a harbinger of the seasons. It's a beautiful butterfly, and the habitat. And actually, I just did this presentation early spring before we got locked down for COVID. To quail and pheasants forever, and they're one of our strongest partners, because you know, habitat for one is habitat for all. And if you're looking at these native corridors and these migration corridors, we're seeing declines in quail populations, we're seeing declines in bumblebee populations, we're seeing declines in native bees. Monarchs are really telling us that we have a problem in our landscape, and it's a problem that's solvable. And the other thing goes back to it's for all. And, you know, if we're not having good erosion control because we don't have the right plant material out there in the landscape, then it becomes a problem for us as humans and a problem for our infrastructure. So monarchs are really, they're the voice for a lot of other species.
Yep. That's exactly what I would have said. I would add that as wildlife biologist and wildlife conservationist, as the three of us, we like to harness that energy, and we like to inspire people, and we want to connect people. And so, you know, I think the monarch butterfly has done that. And so we're just kind of harnessing that energy and using it to our advantage. Because when you plant a monarch way station, you'll be amazed how much you're benefiting every other organism in the ecosystem. Even if it's on such a small scale, it really does wonderful things for everything. And so, yeah, the monarch butterfly is important because it just, people have gravitated to it, and it has a remarkable story. Let's see, how much time do we have? We have a couple minutes. Okay. This question is just kind of a general question. Does anyone know of local stores that sell milkweeds and other plants that are recommended for our area? I found some stores in Oklahoma City, but not any in Tulsa.
I know Okies has, on their website, they have a list of all the vendors who are dealing with native plants. One of the things that we're hearing from our local industry, and I think this is nationwide, is COVID-19 has increased the interest in gardening. And I think we may have our own promotion of monarchs may have also contributed to the lack of milkweed in the industry right now. But again, that's going back to that seed production. I think there are people looking into how to increase milkweed as well. So I would check the Okies for Monarch page to see what the vendors are in your area. I know there's the Jinx Plant Festival and the Sand Springs Urban Plant Festival, which have already occurred. But some of the vendors had milkweed. There's also a plant festival coming up in at Will Rogers. The Myriad Festival is this weekend, Myriad Garden Festival. And so some of the vendors will be there with milkweed as well.
Yeah, there's a huge nursery in Sand Springs, right off of Highway 97.
Yeah.
You just exit the highway there and go on 97 and head south a little bit. And on the left-hand side, I can't remember the name of it, but we also keep on the Monarch Initiative Tulsa a webpage that's found on sustainabletulsainc.org's webpage. If you click on Monarch tab, there's an active plant list there that has links that you can go directly to that nursery site and see, and there's phone numbers that you can call them directly. I always recommend calling or checking first before you show up. Also, Greenleaf and Broken Arrow has native plants and milkweed. So there's lots of resources out there to direct you to where to find them. It's just a matter of actually finding where they're at. They do sell fast, like Vonceil said. It's there's quite a demand.
Yeah, we're really seeing a kind of a void right now, just because of the excitement of it.
Yes, and if you're interested in starting from seed, like I did, because when I first got involved in gardening for monarchs, I didn't know anything about native plants. Well, I knew some things, but not a lot. And so I just took the easy way out and planted by seed, and it was fantastic and so fun to watch things grow. And you know, after a couple seasons, to see what kind of takes over and flourishes. But Okies for Monarchs has seed packets that we can provide to folks. If you get on the website and contact us, or contact me, you can reach me through Sustainable Tulsa's website and the Okies page, or the Monarch Initiative Tulsa page. There's a direct link that you can reach out to me and email me if you would like some advice, or you need resources here in Tulsa area for putting in a habitat.
I also just wanted to chime in that I put a link in the chat for the where to buy on the Okies for Monarchs website, and then also a link for Monarch Watch, which is giving out free milkweeds for restoration projects over 2 acres. And the application period is currently open. So for larger projects, check out the link in the chat.
Yeah, somebody also commented Grog's Green Barn also has tons of natives and milkweed species. So I think we're at time, Corey.
Wonderful. Wow. We have this program on, and as you mentioned, Rick, you've been presented several years in a row, but it's, I always learn something new. As much as it is saddening to see that it's being listed as a potential endangered species, it looks like there is also an opportunity for us to, come together and make sure it doesn't show up on that list through those stems of milkweed and other things. So really appreciate everyone's President Vonceil and Katie and Rick, your contribution today. And I know there's many other experts on the call today too that have been advocates for helping to protect this very important species, as it indicates other things that we need to be aware of in our community. It looks like we have a May challenge set there. Megan, would you like to share about that?
Yes, thank you, Corey. And just a quick reminder, we have one final poll for you to fill out. So if you don't mind filling that out before you leave, I know we're over time, so appreciate it. Such good information. We'll be sending out those links in email tomorrow with the recording of today's event. But last but not least is our May challenge. So over on our Sustainable Tulsa Facebook action group, we're going to be launching a challenge of planting a pollinator garden. As you heard both Katie and Vonceil say, it's pretty easy to make that happen. So find a pot, find a plot of land on your property or on your balcony and plant a pollinator garden. We've got to be part of that change. We've got to be part of that, all hands on deck. So plant a pollinator garden and post pictures of your pollinator garden in our Facebook Sustainable Action Groups. Teresa's sharing that link right now in our chat. So that is it from me, Corey.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And yes, and post some of those favorite pollinator plants that you are planting this year, some of your favorites this year. Yes, thank you again to Rick, Katie, and Vonceil for sharing your knowledge today and your expertise. Just love that you're a part of helping to protect the species and your advocacy there. And clearly we need everyone to be a part of that. Also want to thank our sponsors today. Again, that's why we're able to bring this program to you. We want to thank Williams as our lead sponsor and our neighborhood partner sponsor, Public Service Company of Oklahoma and PSO Wind Choice, and our community advocates, American Waste Control, Cavanta, the Met, One Oak, Save Our Streams, Spirit Air Systems, and Tulsa Farmers Market. If you want to also be a sponsor of today's program and moving forward, please reach out to me. We're always looking for more sponsors so that we continue the work that we do and get this education out to our community. We look forward to seeing you at our next month, first Thursday, June 3rd. But again, watch for other posts regarding leading up to the centennial of the Tulsa 1921 race massacre. We, as a community here as well, need to come together. So look for that. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.